Hey, you Sooner football fans. This is your Sooner Football Fans podcast. Today, once again, we have Jason Young from the Football Brainiacs, and we're talking recent lineman commits for 2019. Offensively, we got EJ Ndoma-Ogar, Marcus Alexander, defensive, Joseph Wete, and Marcus Hicks. And we discuss Michael Thompson's injury. How is it going to affect the 2018 depth? Sooner football fans is not associated with the University of Oklahoma, but we do have eligibility left. Boomer. Hey, Sooner football fans. You got Terry and Rob here. Boomer, Rob.
Boomer, Terry.
And once again, from the Football Brainiacs, the OU edition, he authors Trench Warfare. We have on with us Jason Young. How's it going, Jason?
Boomer, Terry. Boomer, Rob.
Boomer, man.
Boomer.
So, how was your weekend been?
Oh, it's been great. Just hanging out by the father-in-law's pool a little bit, taking the boy to get wet and chasing him around. So that's always a handful.
How old's your boy?
Oh man, he's getting ready to be 4 on July the 1st.
Ah, so the fun is just beginning with just a 4-year-old.
Definitely.
Yeah, meals and wheels, man. That kid gets it.
Yeah, well, we were talking before. My wife had a family reunion down on Lake Eufaula, so we took the doors and the top off the Jeep and screamed down Highway 9 to Lake Eufaula. And her heritage is Indian, Choctaw Indian, and so I was looking forward to. We're gonna get. I was expecting, fry bread and Indian tacos and all that other good stuff, and not a single Indian taco there. It was all barbecue and.
That should be partially illegal, man. Indian tacos are some of the greatest things known to man.
Oh, I know.
Fry bread is an 8th-day creation, in my opinion.
And the best thing is they try to stick to their heritage. It's a great family, a lot of fun, and they announced, we were getting ready to get in line, and they said, as tradition goes, our elders get to go first. And the older folks stood up, and I raised my hand, and I said, what is the definition of an elder? And I stood up like I'm going to go get in line, and I was 5th in line behind my wife. So that's another good thing with being old and the Indian folks is that you get to be at the front of the line the older you get. So you got all your first picks of food.
That's good news.
Yeah. So, Rob, what'd you do this weekend?
Not much. Not much. I tried to play a little golf, but still a little sore. So,
did you go out again after Friday, or was it just on Friday?
No, just on Friday.
But you recovered from
the shoulder's healing up. I'll be able to go pretty quick.
Yeah, Rob had rotator cuff surgery last year, so he hadn't been able to swing the clubs for a while.
Heck, I get pretty sore. I hadn't had rotator cuff after I go play golf. So. Well, he's got an excuse.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. I didn't think about that. But.
Well, then I'm 400 pounds. That doesn't help anything.
But anyway, let's get into things. And what we're doing, everybody's been talking about Caleb, being back on the podcast. Thought he might, come sneaking back in here. But he's fixing to go over to a friend's house. I thought he was going to hop in here tonight. But he had a question the other day when we were up at Buffalo Wild Wings, and we are going to touch base on it and going to keep it out there with everybody. And we're going to ask you the question that he has is that Caleb believes that Oklahoma is going to lose a football game next year. No ifs, ands, or buts. Everybody's going to lose a football game next year, he believes. It's happened the last several years. Nobody's gone undefeated. But the question is who are they going to lose to and when? So, Jason, what do you think about that?
Well, the team that scares the hell out of me is Army.
Yeah, I agree.
That's what I've been saying.
You look at that offense, and last year, Bowling Green gave us fits. Yeah. And Army's a heck of a lot better than they are. And Army was a 9-win team, 8 or 9 wins last year, and very good, very productive. And they know how to run that option. And unless you're very assignment sound, then they're going to gas you. And I don't have a lot of faith in the discipline on that side of the ball until I see it, just based off of what we saw at the end of last year. And hate to throw rocks at anybody, but I'm just trying to be honest.
Right.
You know, under Stoops, you always had, it seemed like, you always had a head scratcher here or there. You know, of course, West Virginia with that high octane offense is going to be tough. I think it's in Morgantown this year.
Right.
So that's going to be tough, but I think the guys will be ready to play. I mean, you go into Morgantown, how are you not ready to play? Those guys, they get a little out of hand up there, burning couches and whatnot. So, you know, it gets crazy. You know, Florida Atlantic right off the bat, you know, gives me concerns. But being the first game of the year, and you know, I just don't know. I think it's going to happen early. I think even, you know, I think we're naive to think that Kyler Murray or whoever else comes in and starts, we're not going to see some sort of drop off. You know, you got to replace Orlando Brown on the front. You got to replace Eric Wren in the middle. So there's bound to be some communication issues right off the bat with that. So, and you know, I don't know. It's as I get older, I get a little bit more level-headed. In the past, I said, "Oh hell, we ain't gonna lose anything," you know. But you know, but I've seen it too many times, and I think these, you know, football's a funny game.
Yeah.
And you know, Army is a bunch of high character, high octane kids that are going to come in and they're going to be ready to play.
Yeah.
And you know, they're going to be very well disciplined, very well coached, and like I said before, they just really scare me to death.
Yeah, and Rob brought up a good point the other day. Is the first 4 games that we have FAU, UCLA, Iowa State, and Army. All of those are circled on those teams' schedules, especially the 3 non-conference game because that's their marquee game of this year. And right now, especially those 3 teams are practicing for that Oklahoma game. Don't you think? Yeah, I mean that's their. It's going to be a statement for Chip Kelly coming into Oklahoma. If he can beat Oklahoma with UCLA, that's going to be a kickoff to him. Army being Army. I mean, like you said, methodical. They do the same. They're still doing the same thing. They don't ever change, and they do it well. But then FAU, I just went blank. What's coach's name?
Lane Kiffin.
Yeah, Lane Kiffin. Okay, a win coming into Norman and beating the Sooners could be his ticket out of FAU, because he's been relic down to, he's been at Tennessee, USC, Alabama, and then he had to take FAU. He comes in and beats Oklahoma. It's going to put his stock back up there.
It makes his season. It makes his career. He gets a jump.
And what's funny about that group of games that you're talking about is Oklahoma's doing so well out in California recruiting. Right now they're in on a ton of kids that are not looking at USC that we haven't heard about yet publicly. But a lot of those kids aren't looking at UCLA. So, like I said, if Chip Kelly comes in, he's going to turn some heads. And if that loss happens, that may be more painful than any of the others just in terms of long-term recruiting in California.
Right.
Definitely.
And, the good thing, if there is a good thing about losing is that Oklahoma has proven, or they're the example of lose early, you can still get in the playoffs. We did it last year. We lost 2 games the year before, and we're in the playoff talk. And we lost 3 years ago. Bama's the only one who can lose late and get in. So they can lose their last game of the season. They're still going to be there. But Oklahoma has been the example of if you lose early and you turn that key, you turn that corner and you get better every week after that, it's not going to affect you. When you're confident.
Yeah, back in the day with Miami and Florida State, it seemed like they played early in the year just for that purpose.
Right. So, that's what, if there's a loss in there, which, I mean, not because he's my son, but he does make a lot, when was the last undefeated national champion? I'm sure it wasn't very long ago, but most of your teams now have lost a game either going into the playoffs or, at the end of the season, period. So it's just whether or not where we lose it at, I think, is going to be the important part. Obviously, as a huge Sooner fan, we're all going to expect every game we go out there and destroy them and win every game. But the reality is that's very hard to do nowadays.
Sure.
So, but those three non-conference games, I think, are the most intriguing we've had in a long time, because we've usually had a pretty solid, an Ohio State, but then you have a Tulane and whoever else you play in there. But this year we've got, three pretty solid.
They're pretty sound.
Yeah, pretty sound, solid teams going to come in here, and I'm really excited, like you, to see the Army game, just for the, not just for the way, the way the guys, the schemes and everything, but the pomp and circumstance and the way the university always respects the military academies, because they'll have something special, but that team, we were talking the other day about it too, is that you got to remember these guys, a lot of them, they're going to come out of the military academy and move into the ranks, but there's a lot of them out there that are going to end up being, Green Berets and Special Forces. They're learning how to, they're not, they're learning how to kill you with their pinky. So,
right.
It's not like these guys are, they're undersized, but that's the cool thing about Army and all the military academies is they have gotten to where they coach to their talent. You know what I mean? They're not going to be able to stretch you out down the field and throw. They're just not going to be able to get those type of athletes.
I think the thing I hate about it is we have got to prepare for that offense. There's no ifs, ands, buts about it. We can't just say, okay, we're going to run a kind of a vanilla defensive package that maybe we get to use later on Texas as well. We have got to prepare for that scheme and those backs.
Yeah, which, and we don't have to do that with everybody else. Yeah, you prepare, but they are completely different than everybody else. So it will make for an interesting game, I think. But anyway, let's get into some of the recruiting that come about the last few days, and it's crazy. It's literally the last few days, which still just dumbfounds me that recruiting is still a hot topic. Here we are in June. How times have changed since I think probably the last 5 or 6 years with recruiting. But Oklahoma has gotten 4 new recent commits, and being that this is the trench warfare talk, we're going to focus in on the 4 guys on the offensive and defensive lines, starting with the offense. And we've got EJ and Ndoma-Ogar. Is that correct? Is that how we pronounce his name?
Yeah, I think that's how you do it. He's he's 6'3". He goes about 310. He's out of Allen, Texas, which, they've been winning everything in the highest classification in Texas for the last few years. It's where Tyler Murray came out of. It's kind of turning into somewhat of a pipeline for us. Got the big receiver that's coming to us, too. I think Theo Wees is coming out of there this year.
Right.
And of course, being such a powerhouse, they've always got prospects. But the thing that you see about EJ is that he's just everything that you're looking for in terms of an interior player. He's a guy that's got tremendous hip flexibility and plays tackle for his high school team, but he doesn't quite have the length to come in and play at tackle position in college. So, that's what Beatonbow does, and what I always say is he'll get these guys that are supremely athletic and powerful that play tackle in high school, and then he'll slide them down inside, and that gives him a tremendous amount of versatility. And case in point being the spring, and when I got on this last time, we talked about how, you had, Cody Ford playing out at tackle, because Cody was one of the first guys that he recruited like that. But he's a little bit bigger than EJ, not by much, but EJ is tremendously powerful. He's great with his hands. He's very technical. Obviously, he's still got some things he needs to refine, but as far as high school players go, he's one of the most well-coached offensive linemen you're going to see coming in out of high school that we've seen in a while. He's very refined. In the past, you'd have kids like him that would look to go to in Alabama or something like that, and you did. You had Chris Daniels here 2 or 3 years ago that kind of jumped out of the Metroplex down there in Wete, Alabama, and that's kind of who EJ reminds me of. Very powerful, very refined, very athletic. He's going to be a guy that's going to come in and provide immediate depth, not going to need a whole lot of development, has the potential to redshirt, be a 2 or 3 year starter, or if you need it, he can come in and give you immediate depth day one and push some of those veteran players. So that's a huge pickup there.
And he is a 4-star. Now, didn't he play? I was reading something at one of the what is it? The academy, was it the same academy that Bookie was from, or is it he's been there?
Yeah, I think he went to IMG for a little while down in Florida.
Okay,
that's about the biggest one, I think, isn't
it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And he came back, I guess, for his senior year here, or junior and senior year, I guess.
Yeah.
Now, you talked about his flexibility and stuff. Now, okay, from a fan standpoint, they're watching. I just, go on and watch their little highlight film, and I know it's highlight. And every single one of his highlights, he had somebody on their backside.
Sure. Right.
And like you said, he's playing in the biggest class down in Texas, and that's no easy feat. He was putting some guys, not just, he was driving them off the ball if they were head up on him, driving them off the ball on their back, and God help you if you were a linebacker coming across and didn't see him, because he put a couple of linebackers, basically went through them as a block.
Must be one stout kid, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's very good at locating linebackers at the second level. It almost comes natural to him, and that speaks to the level of coaching that he has, because a lot of times when you're coming up to the second level, you have to know the play, know the scheme, know what the defender's going to do, and anticipate where they're going to be rather than where they are.
Right.
And he's very good at that, and he's very good at arriving with his face in his hands at the same time. And a lot of kids don't know how to use their hands as well as EJ does at this point. And when he and I first started talking, that was something that he needed to, really develop. And he's worked really hard on his hands, and it shows. I mean, he's been dominant. He's going to the opening there in Frisco. He's just one of those guys that he takes to coaching very well. And I think he's going to flourish under Bedenbaugh's tutelage, just because he takes that and he wants that constructive criticism to where he can be elite.
Cool. Well, okay. What about the next one, Marcus Alexander? He's 3-star from Sunnyvale, Texas.
Yeah.
He just
Marcus is a little shade bigger than what EJ is. He's 6'4", goes about 290. Marcus is the guy that you want with you in a fight in the alley. When you look at him, doesn't quite have the hip flexibility as what EJ does. When you look at a guy's stance, you notice how natural or how low that they can get, and just sit there in their stance. His hips are a little bit up, just a hair. So, but the guy moves people, just like you said about EJ. Run blocking is his forte. That guy is a steamroller. He's the guy that you want with his hand in the dirt on 4th and 1, 3rd and 1 with the game on the line. When everybody knows that you got to run the football, he's the guy that you want in there that's going to generate movement when you need that. And the guy's powerful. Now, he doesn't use his hands as well as what EJ does, but that's what's scary about this kid, is that once he learns how to use his hands, the guy's going to be lethal, because, for a lot of kids, and myself included, I didn't learn how to use my hands until probably 2nd or 3rd year I got into college. And so really, if you think about it from that standpoint, you're playing as half a man, because you're just hitting people with your shoulders and your face, and you're driving with your legs, but you're not bench pressing them off of you.
Right.
And you're not controlling them with your hands, and there's so much power. You spend all this time bench pressing and working out and doing all these things, but if you don't use that and you don't consciously think about it as an offensive lineman, then you're going to allow the defenders to get their hands on you, and they're going to control you and things like that. So that's, I think, from a top-end potential standpoint, if Marcus gets in there and works really hard, I think Marcus could be a very, very sought-after offensive lineman when it's all said and done, if he stays healthy and does the right things in terms of NFL guys. because he's got a tremendous frame, huge, thick in the lower body, and just extremely powerful. I'm really excited about Marcus. I mean, I know that people, might not be that excited about him because, most publications have him rated as a 3-star, but, that's just, you never know how good a kid's going to be until they get in there and work.
Right.
But the raw materials are definitely there.
So let me ask you something, and we'll do this on both sides of the ball here. But with offensive, with Beatonbow right now, these kids have committed. What are you talked about their the hands and the use of the hand, how they use their hands on the line. Is there something that he is telling them? Do you think, or is he able to do that? I don't know. To go, hey, and maybe even talk to the coaches or high school coaches. What this is where we want to see you improve by the time you get on campus. Is that something he's able to do, or is it just stuff that maybe he talked to him as, hey, when you get here, here's the points that you're going to have to work on, and we're going to start from day one with that. How does that process work with them?
Yeah, I don't think it's an NCAA violation for guys to talk about that stuff. I know that kids are going to ask about that. When I had, the coaches that I had going into college, a lot of them just want to make sure you're working out and doing the things you're doing. But definitely he'd be the type of kid that would seek out, that instruction and say, hey, what do I need to improve on? And a lot of these coaches are going to want that too. And you see a lot of these coaches go on these visits with these kids, and the kids will go in and they'll watch film with Beatonbow, and he'll be able to point to the development. You look at a guy like Ben Powers, who is, he's probably going to get drafted here this next year and gets developed after coming out of Butler County Community College from a really small town in Kansas. So, Beatonbow can point to that development, and he's really good at that. It's going off of his track record. So, I think kids are going to seek it out. I don't know if he does that, on phone calls. Obviously, I'd love to be a fly on the wall and listen to some of those things, but,
yeah.
Who wouldn't? But, it's, the good kids, the great kids, the ones that really want to get better are always going to be asking that, because you see the difference when kids hit you up on Twitter now. Even for me, and I'm just a hacker, it writes for a website, and kids that really want to get better, they'll say, what do you see? What do you think I need to do? That type of thing. So I'm sure they're doing the same things with coaches. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just something I've been thinking about here recently with all the activity, that's kicked back up with, the recruiting is, again, this is, 2019 and you're seeing 2020 kids commit. To me, it's, again, I'm an old guy, so it's, it seems so early. So, what type of discussions do these guys have, moving forward is here, here's what you need to develop, work on, and so on. I just didn't know if that was something. I'm sure that they ask, and I'm sure that they tell them, but how in depth can the coaches get with them was been kind of my question, is if they can really, focus in on what they want to work at, or if they're going, hey, keep playing like you have in high school. When you show up here to when you get here, we're going to turn you into, a real monster, which is probably the latter, I would think.
Yeah, and a lot of it's more today is more about relationships. You hear about kids talking that, I talk to coach 3 times a week, and they're always asking about my family and my school and different things like that, because in today's recruiting era, it's much more about, making sure that the kids know that you care about them, rather than, in the past, the parents wanted you to go play for a drill sergeant, because they knew they were going to keep you in line. And that's just, kind of how society's changed a little bit, but it makes a lot of sense, because kids now are just a little bit different than what we were growing up.
Oh, yeah.
A little bit.
All right, well, let's get on to the defensive side of the ball. We got 2 defensive ends that committed, again, just here in the last week. I hope I pronounce his last name right. Joseph, is it Wete?
I think it might be Wete or Wete.
I know it has. Yeah, he's a 4-star defensive end out of Washington, D.C. What do you know on Joseph?
Well, he's explosive. You look at as far as who they have on campus right now. the only guy that would be close to the explosiveness that what he has would be somebody like Jalen Redmond. And as Sooner fans, we haven't seen him yet come out and play in a game. Probably will here pretty quick. But Joseph is extremely explosive. He's a pass rusher through and through. He's a weak side defensive end. They continue to talk about being multiple with Mike Stoops' defense being a 3-4. Very, similar to, say, what an oboe is, but oboe soaking wet, barefooted is probably going to be 6'1", 6'2", whereas Joseph is 6'4". Right. So, 6'3.5", 6'4". So, Lincoln Riley is definitely after these kids that have a lot more length than what you've seen in the past. You look at just as far as who they have on the roster now, you've got Mark Jackson, who's 6'1", but then you go a year later and you got K. Zachary Daly and, Addison Gums that are 6'3", 6'2.5", and you see them progressively get taller and taller. And the reason that's relevant, especially as a pass rusher, going back to that hand fight game and with offensive players focusing so much on their hands, as a defender, you've got to have the arm length a little bit and the upper torso length to be able to fight off those hands a little bit. Whereas an Eric Stryker, he wasn't very tall at all, but he was just so quick off the ball that he didn't need a lot of length because he could just beat people. Joseph has that kind of explosiveness. I don't want to say that he's got the equal of that, but he's very explosive. He's going to be a guy that, if they turn him loose, like we talked last time you guys had me on, if they'd have turned Obo loose, ain't no telling how many sacks he would have had. But Joseph's that kind of guy. But what I also like about his film is when you watch him, he holds the point very well. He's not very heavy. In high school, he's probably 210, 220 right now, which for a defensive end isn't all that heavy. We've heard a little bit that they're going to go to more of a traditional four-man front, something that Sooner fans are a little bit more used to seeing. And, if that is the case and they want him to play, 3 downs, 4 downs, then, you'd like to see him get up to, 240 or 250, and he definitely has a frame to do that, but you're going to see him on the weak side of the formation. And he's the pass rusher that you need because he can get on top of those offensive players, like what we talked about last time, the quarterbacks and those timing offenses, and disrupt that because everything's 3-step drop, drop back and get it out quick. So you need somebody that can get back there quick.
Yeah, and just right behind him came in another weak side defensive end, another 4-star, Marcus Hicks out of Wichita, Kansas. Another monster-sized kid, right?
Yeah, Marcus is 6'6". He's another guy that's like a Ron Tatum that the Sooners got in the fold here last year that's 6'5". So you look at, Jalen Redmond, who was 6'2", 6'3", and went about 240, 250. That's the Joseph Wesley player that's going to be the pass rusher that you need off the weak side. But then you got, the guys like Ron Tatum and Marcus Hicks that are going to come in and provide that strong side defensive end or play that 4-eye that you see Monty Bledsoe playing, that I think very similar to a Frank Alexander that Sooners had in the past from a build standpoint. Marcus is one of those players that almost seems like a ghost when you try to block him. And I look back at when I played ball, we had a guy named Steve Howerson that was just very difficult to even brush pads with sometimes unless you were very fundamentally sound. Marcus is that kind of guy, and you think about how is that possible if you got a guy that big and that long that you can't lay hands on him, and he's just very, very good at getting unblocked, and he runs well for his size. Not as explosive as what a Joseph is, but he's got 60 or 70 pounds on him. He's just a bigger man, but he's definitely the explosive enough that you need there on the strong side, and he'd be a very good hybrid player there if they do go into that 3-4 look. Very good, much more of a pass rusher, I think, at that 4-eye than Sooners are used to seeing. And he's just, going to be on a little bit more of an elite level than what we're used to seeing coming in. Very similar to Ron Tatum that they got last year.
Okay, so me sitting here looking at the type of recruits we've gotten here the last 2 years. Okay, and with you talking about Joseph and Marcus, and I'm looking at their size and everything, I'm actually sitting here starting to get kind of pissed off because you actually kind of brought it up too. Is that Oboe and Striker were undersized? Okay, they were 6'1", 6 foot 6'1", whatever. I remember when we lost to Clemson in the Orange Bowl, everybody came out, and even the players came out and said, "We know what we got to do. We got to get bigger and stronger." Okay, I think Stryker was one of them that said that. We know our gauge. We got to be stronger, and there was a big deal about how much all of them improved in the weight room and everything. Why is it? Okay, is it the scheme that we were running? Or was it Mike's decision, or was it Bob's decision to get smaller defensive ends? Because now in the last several ones that you look at that we get, these two included, they're 6'4", 6'5", 6'6". Why haven't we been doing that all along, or have we not been able to get in on those types of players defensively? What's been the change?
Well, I think to a degree that the Big 12 has been stealing Joe Tiller's term, basketball on grass, for a long time now. And from a defensive coordinator standpoint, it's had those guys chasing their tails. And Bob and Mike, Bob definitely coming from Florida, they wanted guys that can run. And the guys like the Joseph Wete and a guy like, Kajackery Bailey and Eric Stryker and all these guys that can run, the big ones don't grow on trees.
Mm-hmm.
You got to go all the way to Washington, D.C. to find a player that's as explosive as Joseph is. And those kids are very hard to come by. And the difference, I think, now that under Lincoln Riley that you see versus what we saw a little bit under Stoops is Riley's very, very aggressive on the recruiting trail. He's told his coaches to go after all the elite kids, and some of the kids out there are telling some of the OU commits, tell the coaches to offer me when they see him at some of these events, and that hasn't happened in the past. Right. Oklahoma hasn't recruited on the level that they're recruiting at now in forever. I remember, being on the message boards for, 15 years now, that the saying was always, it's only April, it's only May, it's only June, you only got 2 or 3 commits, it's no big deal. We always get somebody in the end, and it's always what we need, and they were always trying a diamond in the rough like a Jeremy Deal or somebody like that. But you go back, and Jeremy is the exact same player that, say, Oboe is. Very fast, very smart, but small. And, that's why you don't see him so much at the next level, whereas, you got the Clemsons and the Alabamas and all those guys that, when they get in a bowl game, if they run up against the Texas Tech, they beat them like a drum.
Right.
And I think a lot of that has to do with they focus on, we're going to do what we do, and we're going to dominate the line of scrimmage, and we're going to push the pocket back. And, they've got the speed athletes on the back end, and they just recruit a different level of athlete. And I think you have to go into some of these areas because you look at LSU, and it seems like no matter what the year, those guys, they're monsters. Their defensive line, they're always 6'4", 6'5". They can fly, they're huge, and their offensive line the same way. And you've got to go into these areas where these kids are historically. I mean, you just don't see them in Oklahoma City that much.
Right.
You got a Ron Tatum, you got a Jalen Redmond that comes around once in a while. You get a Bray Walker once in a while, but you don't have 6 of them. Like you have in some of these places in the Southeast and these other places that the SEC recruits historically. And I just think that now that, when Bob came out, there was definitely a movement among the fans and among the coaches and everything else that they got to get longer, they got to get bigger and all that, because after that Clemson game, you just saw that defensive line for Clemson just dominate a shorter, smaller offensive line that we had. The only one that had the size to combat them was, redshirt freshman Orlando Brown, really.
Right. And one of the things I think, this is just my layman opinion here, that I've noticed here again, we followed recruiting, obviously, as from a, fan standpoint. Doing the podcast, we pay a little bit more attention to it, I think, than what we have in the past. But it seems like, to me, with the defensive side of the ball, because Rob and I, when we were sitting around Buffalo Wild Wings talking about, man, we're getting all these offensive recruits. We're getting the number 1, the number 2, the 4 and 5 star receivers, running back, offensive linemen. Where's the defense? Are we just going to build this up? And it seems like here recently that it's like the defense is now catching up. It's you brought up a deal where these kids now are telling these other kids, hey, tell them when they talk to me to offer me. It seems like with the to me it looks like it started with Bookie. We landed this huge recruit, and they're saying, okay, we've got the number 1. We have the returning the number 1 offense in the country, almost in every category. We need the defense to match that, and it seems like the defensive side of the ball now. These kids out there going, hey, they've got the best. All they need to do is put together a defense. And maybe is that what they're recruiting to going, or do you see it kind of the same way? Is now the defense is starting to catch up? All of a sudden, these kids are seeing what's happening in Oklahoma and going, wait a second, I need to be a part of that.
Well, you think that, they just took Georgia to the wire. And, on a huge stage in the Rose Bowl. And, I know all three of us don't feel like it was a classic game because, I watched the highlights of it here the other day and it made me sick. But, you look at the kids that are thinking to themselves, and especially an alpha male like Buki, that thinks, they're, like I said, they're alpha males, and they think, I could be a guy that could come in here and I'm not letting Georgia score 54 points.
Right.
I wish I had Baker Mayfield and Marquise Brown and Rodney Anderson and Mark Andrews and all these guys to give me 50 points. That's how these elite level athletes think. And then they look at a Lincoln Riley, who is a wizard, and you hear the commentary all the time about how, I think the argument that a lot of the talking heads had about Baker early in the year is he doesn't make tough throws because the receivers are so wide open. So they know from a defensive player standpoint that the offense is going to score points because Riley's creative. And you think about how the Big 12 sets up, and really there's not a big, not a big dog on the porch right now besides Oklahoma in the conference.
Right.
Texas is coming back, and they'll be back. I think Tommy Herman's going to do a good job, but I think
they better hurry. Our shoulders are getting tired.
Well, I think the offense has shown that they're going to be there for a while, but the defense has, and I think that kids want to go play their position where they're going to be seen as elite. But, now that Oklahoma seems to be winning on a bigger stage, I think that, Riley's talking to these kids, and, I think with bringing in Bob Diaco to be an advisor and things like that, I think we're going to see some changes this year. I hope for my sanity we're going to see some changes this year. But definitely it all goes back to what Barry Switzer said. It's way more about, or it's less about the X's and O's and way more about the Willies and the Joes.
Yeah.
And that's just an absolute fact because you got, in watching some of that tape, there were some effort issues. There were some, and there's just some guys get pushed around. Whereas if you plug in there's not a Gerald McCoy on that defensive line.
Yeah.
Do either of you guys that I'm talking to now think that if Gerald McCoy plays in that game, it's different?
Oh, yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. And that just goes back to it. So Mike Stoops can scheme his ass off, but if he doesn't have the type of talent that's going to be a difference maker like that, then that's huge. Or a Jordan Phillips in the middle of the defensive line who's now been playing for, Miami forever, and, somebody in the middle that's going to make a difference. We haven't seen those difference makers up front, and we were all hopeful that we were going to have some guys emerge last year, and it just didn't happen. So,
yeah, and that's something that Rob and I have talked about, again, many times, is the attitude of Oklahoma, and I think the attitude is starting to change. Is it seems like for the last several years, I'm going to say 5 or 6 years, maybe even more, it's been Oklahoma has had the attitude is we're going to come out of the locker room, but before we come out, we're going to throw our helmet out there on the field, and everybody's going to crap their pants because they're fixing to play Oklahoma. And we are Oklahoma.
That's the way it should be.
Yeah. But they've had that mentality. They're going to walk in and we're Oklahoma. Look at us. You're having to play us. And instead of it being the mindset of we're Oklahoma, we're going to come in and dominate you and embarrass you if we can. And that's the mentality we used to have in the early days of Stoops. Barry Switzer was never, shy about it. He always talked about we want to hang 100 on somebody and get on the bus and go home. Let's get it done. Let's get out here and do our jobs. And what you were just saying, it reminded me of Oklahoma. One of Bob Stoops' biggest wins, in my opinion. It's his biggest win. It was his only national championship. Was when he beat Florida State for the national championship, and then probably I think his worst loss, and people may disagree with this, was the embarrassment against USC in the national championship loss. That after that game, I remember watching Terry Bowden was talking about he was doing sideline stuff for somebody, and he said that he was on the sidelines in the Oklahoma 2000 national championship game against his dad. And he said when those kids walked out of the locker room, he said I turned around to everybody I knew and said they're going to beat us. They're going to beat Florida State. They're going to put a whooping on them. You could see it in their mentality. He said when Oklahoma come walking out of the locker room for USC, he said there was no attitude. It was cockiness. You know what I mean? He said it was just a kind of a brass. Here we are. They'd been proclaimed the greatest offense in football history because they did. I mean, scored 70 points in 5 straight games. 6. Yeah, but he said, Terry Bowden said you could see a difference in those two teams. It was just a difference in attitude where the 2000 team walked out with a mentality, a look on their face and a determination, and Oklahoma against USC walked out with a we're Oklahoma look on their face and got embarrassed.
And I've said it 100 times. It's way more about attitude than it is aptitude.
Right.
And, it's not so much what you're doing versus how you do it. And, how, with what gusto you do it. And, that's why a guy like Marcus Alexander excites me so much because I want those guys, that are going to fight with me in the parking lot. If you've ever seen the 30 for 30 about the second round.
Yeah.
I think Jeremy Shockey was talking about how he didn't want to be on a team with a bunch of doctors and lawyers or anything else. He wanted to be on a team with a bunch of guys that, we'll play you in the parking lot. We'll play you, a field of broken glass. We don't care. We're going to beat your ass.
Right.
And you've got to have that mentality where you want to fight somebody. And in today's age, that's not popular. Everybody wants the publicity. Everybody wants the glory. Nobody wants to bleed and get dirty and be gritty. And that's what you have to do, and that's what is so exciting about a guy like Buki that's coming in because he's such a talent, but at the same time, he's gritty and he's a worker. At least that's what we hear about.
Yeah.
And some of these kids that are coming in, they got that dog in them. And that's what you need. You need that dog in them. You need somebody who's gonna come out and want to fight.
Yeah, and, like I said, that dog, we had, I remember, you can go all the way back to Bosworth and Cumbie and those guys that had that, but recently, and more recent, even on, the 2000 national championship team, Torrance Marshall, the linebacker. I'll never forget the story when they said he first came on campus. First practice, he walked out to the linebacker position and said, "This is mine." And well, guess whose position that was Rocky Calmus's, and they got in a fist fight right out there. And you don't hear, that's the type of moxie, like you said, that you want in your defense. Well, you want on all your players, but I think especially on your defensive side of the ball, somebody that is going to start a fight if he has to get things going, to get everybody's mentality. One of my favorite players off my pro team, Jack Lambert, in the Super Bowl, against the Cowboys. He should have been kicked out of the game. Thank God he wasn't. But they missed a field goal, and one of the Cowboys guys patted the kicker, on the helmet.
Yep.
And Lambert grabs him and body slams him. And
yep.
Lambert would do that. If he didn't like the way his team was playing, his defense was playing, he would pick a fight with somebody. And just to get that was the spark that they needed. And we haven't seen that, but I think, like what you said, these the alpha males that are coming in here, these guys with attitude.
Like it's coming.
Yeah, it's you're going to see fights for every position. You're going to see a different mentality of a defense, and I think offensive too.
Yeah, and what you said about Torrance Marshall, I don't know if you've ever seen that or heard it in Sooner lore from the ages, when at the coin flip at the Orange Bowl.
Yeah.
he's talking, forgive my language, he's talking shit to Chris Winkie that's just won the Heisman.
Yeah.
And he's like, you got our boys talking about Josh Heupel. He's like, you got our boys' trophy back, and we're going to take it.
Yeah.
We want that trophy back. That's his trophy.
Yeah, and
we're going to find out tonight.
Winkie looked like he was backed into a corner,
he looked like he peed down his leg like that.
It wasn't, all he could say was, it was never his. It was never his. I was like, man.
Right.
And that set a precedence. I believe it 100% that set a precedence in that game of this guy is going to take my head off at any point in time if he gets a chance to. And
and you think about who was on that team. Talking about scary guys, right?
Yeah.
You had a guy like Rocky Calmus. You had Roy Williams. You had him. You had Brandon Everidge. You had all these guys. Ante Jones that had probably the game of his life that night. But, these guys were killers.
Yeah.
Any one of those guys, you wouldn't want to start anything. And you had a team full of those guys. And you just haven't had that, and I'm hoping that's coming back.
Yeah. Well, everybody's been getting excited, just like I was talking about, or the talk has been the defense is starting to catch up recruiting wise with the offense. We're starting to see, the 4-star, the alpha male, these the studs of their position starting to talk about Oklahoma. Then we get the news on the 6th from Michael Thompson tweeted out that he is out for the 2018 season due to an ACL injury. So tell us what you know about this ACL. Did he hurt it at practice? What went on? Or do you know?
Well, from the rumors I've heard, and some of the things going around on Twitter, that, Michael has had this injury now for a year or two. And he actually played on it in high school, and he didn't know about it. So it's not something that, in the past, everybody was a Sooner fan because of Smitty. Or Schmitty, but he's since gone to Texas A&M, so, they can't get on Benny Wiley for this one. But it's something I think that they found in doing his check when he got on campus and they were evaluating all the guys. The doctors were checking the kids out. They do that ACL. You see them on the field when a kid's down, they'll tug on the knee and all that kind of thing. I'm sorry I don't have the technical name of the test, but at any rate, they discovered it, when I don't think he was working out. It's just when they were checking him out, and they thought better of it that he go ahead and get that repaired, So, and what's scary about it, like what we've talked about before, is how dominant this kid was. And for the senior year of high school, at least, he's playing on a torn ACL. And, geez, man, that's good. Yeah. So, there's no telling how good he could be. And, from what I understand, the kids love Benny Wiley as a strength coach. And so, he's going to get good rehab and nutrition and all that stuff, and he'll come back. But, he was definitely somebody I was looking forward to seeing, because it's funny that we talked about what we just did, because when you look along that defensive line, and, you get on Soonersports.com, and you look at the list of names, and nobody scares you.
Right.
And I was hoping Michael Thompson could come in and be one of those guys, Ronnie Perkins, is going to need to step up. Go ahead, son.
Because I think, from everything that we've looked at and we've talked about it, especially as we moved on after the signing. It was, I think initially it was, hey, he's going to be good. And then I guess the talk was, wait a second, this kid may be an impact a lot quicker than what we think. And it took the air out of my balloon when it was like, ugh, are you kidding me? We got, we jump in late because he was a late signee. It was like the 12th hour signee. And, all the talk was, how it was unexpected that he chose Oklahoma. And then lo and behold, we got to wait another year for any type of impact on it.
Yeah, and you look at talking again about those alpha males, the guy that really kind of brought Michael into the fold was Ronnie Perkins. He was that alpha male, the baddest dude in St. Louis, And so I'm thinking you're going to see a little bit of that, with Ronnie. Hopefully you'll see some of it from Tatum a little bit. You'll see Jalen Redmond this year. And there's going to be some fierce competition at those defensive end spots. But I'm hoping that they just turn loose Marquise Overton. He's a kid, to me, that if they just turn him loose and let him get upfield and have him not play this two-gap scheme and help him penetrate, the kid is really quick. He's a guy that I think that he's just been kind of in the wrong scheme most of his career. And I think he could have a breakout year this year if they just turn him loose along the interior. So the other thing that stands out to me with losing Michael is there was a rumor going around that Tremonda Moore may come in and get a little bit of time on the defensive side of the ball. And, of course, you don't know how that's going to play out because they may have to do that out of necessity now. But, whereas before with Michael over there, you don't know what they're going to do. So
yeah,
we'll see how that goes.
Well, I know we've talked about it before too. Is that I just want to see more aggression on our defense. And there was a post on Twitter the other day, and talked just about, and that's basically what all the fans that were in this discussion were on the defensive side is the aggressiveness. It just doesn't. There hasn't been an aggressive style of defense. It would poke its head out every now and then. We talked about it last time you were on Ohio State. Every now and then you would see this. Wow, okay, this is what we want. And I think if it's the talent, he's worried about the talent, that he doesn't have the talent to do that, or if it's the effort that the guys put in, whatever the case is I think that's what Sooner fans are wanting to see is just a more aggressive style of defense. I mean, and of course, we being the fans that we are, we run an aggressive style of defense and we start getting burned over the top. Everybody's going to be going, wait a minute, we didn't want that aggressive. But you know what I mean? It just seems like the scheme has been more, is it laid back that I'm looking for, Rob, or what? I can't, it just doesn't seem.
It's definitely been a passive scheme.
Yeah, sure. Passive. That's a good word.
Yeah, passive. Yeah. And I think that's what the Sooner fans want to see and we've had discussions, since you've been on, if you agree, if we have a top 35, top 30 defense last year, we win the national championship without a doubt. I think most people would say,
you'd have beat Alabama like a drum in the national championship, right? And, you think about it too, watching those highlights of the Rose Bowl, it's 31-13 with, seconds before halftime, and then we kicked that damn onside kick. And, but still, you shouldn't have to score 55 points to win a game.
No.
You shouldn't. And so you think about the type of.
And if you do score 55 points, you should win the game. Is the bigger point.
It should be 55. Yeah, it should be 55-19, like USC did to us.
Right.
So, I'm with you 100%. I think that we've got to have the athletes on the back end, and I think they're starting to see that now. And Buki's definitely going to help because he can play that third corner, that nickel. I'm really hopeful now that they just let those kids play because Buki's the type of kid that he's going to say something.
Yeah.
And you would see in the past that some of those kids, when Mike would be on the sidelines, they'd get into a throwdown on the sideline with the coach, over the scheme. So Julian Wilson do it a couple of years ago, and, you hear stories about that team in 2000 doing the same thing. So, but you got to have the courage to stand up to your coaches when, and tell them to let you play a little bit too sometimes. So.
Do you think the secondary is going to be better? I think the secondary is better. The only thing we're really worried about is the linebackers and up front. What do you think about that?
I think the secondary is going to be better just because you have a little bit more depth. We talked about Buki at length. Parnell Motley's back this year. I think that you got the kid out of Little Rock that came in and started last year. So your two corners got better as the year went on. You got a guy like Trey Brown that's been chomping at the bit to try to get in. You got Justin Boyles waiting in the wings that's can play his butt off too. I think that last year it was more of an injury thing that you saw at linebacker. You didn't have the depth there either, but now you've got Levi Draper, you've got John Michael Terry that's been pushing guys along the interior. I know that Kenneth Murray has had a fire lit under his butt because last year there wasn't anybody that could really step in because everybody was hurt. And, so now you've got guys that are coming in that are going to be a little bit better prepared to play because you get Curtis Bolton back, who got hurt, and everybody's thinking, oh, well, he's a reserve linebacker, but you would think because Curtis has been around a long time, and he was very good, very highly touted recruit coming out of California himself, that as Murray faltered last year, that he goes in and you probably don't have some of the issues that we saw there. So I think the linebackers are going to be better. I think the secondary is going to be better. I don't know about the defensive line. I am excited about these young guys that are coming in. I am excited about some of the things that you hear about being a traditional four-man front, maybe turning these guys loose a little bit. I'm excited about that, but the proof's in the pudding until I see it happen on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know, but to your point, Rob, I do think that the secondary and the linebackers are going to be better. And just from a talent standpoint with Jalen Redmond, I keep going back to him. If they put him up on the line and just say, go get him and turn him loose, I think he's going to be a terror.
Well, and I think even in the spring game, you saw, a little bit of that on the defensive side because they turned Bookie loose a couple of times on some blitzes from, back deep. And to me, it looked like, it was his call. You know what I mean? He was moving around. And, obviously he couldn't, he pulled up 5 yards ahead, but it really looked like he had the determining factor of what he was doing. You know what I mean? It was, I can either, when he saw what happened, or how the place was looking, he made his decision to go on the blitz because there was other times he was doing the same exact thing and then he wouldn't blitz. So to me, it looked like they kind of gave him, hey, if they're doing X, Y, and Z,
auto reads.
Yeah, you go after them. If they're doing Z, Y, and X, don't. But pay attention to what's going on. That's what little thing on the during the spring game because they didn't show much. That's one thing I liked seeing because we haven't seen a blitzer like that since really probably Roy Williams. I mean, coming from that deep and being effective at it, not just not doing it, but being constantly effective at it. And
you like you said, just from an effectiveness standpoint, Leroy Butler was great at it, played for Green Bay a few years ago, but even before Roy. And you got to have a knack for it. Some of those guys played running back a little bit, know how to get through traffic. There's an art to it, and he definitely has a knack for it.
Yeah. But, man, all this talk is it's getting me pumped up for football
Calm
season.
down, Terry. We still got several months to go.
Good grief. But, hey, before we let you go, I do want to do a little public service announcement that we're helping a family out. It's called the Team Kyler Forever Foundation. That is a newly started foundation. A family, Amanda Bonham, lost her son, Kyler Bonham. He was 4 years old, passed away last month from a rare cancer that affects children. And on June 21st from 5 to 9 p.m. at Buffalo Wild Wings in Norman, they're having a fundraiser there, and we'll be tweeting out the mobile certificates. And that if anybody goes to Buffalo Wild Wings in Norman and shows that mobile certificate on their mobile phone, 10% of their ticket will be donated to the Team Kyler Forever Foundation. We're also we've started putting them out on Twitter. A coffee mug with our logo. Not that anybody wants to see our ugly mugs on their mug.
All three listeners,
yeah, all three. But we got a coffee mug out there and some T-shirts and hoodies out there. They have our logo on the front, and on the back they have the eyeballs, the Lincoln Riley eyeballs that come out on Twitter with hashtag OUDNA on it. And we don't sell anything we don't sell products to make any money. They ask us for help. So all of the proceeds to these T-shirts and hoodies and mugs, if anybody will go buy them, we're going to give to this family and the foundation that they're starting. The primary focus for this Buffalo Wild Wings outing and our T-shirts is the family still has funeral expenses that were left over that they need to get paid. So it's helping the family out. They've used up all their resources. And then moving forward, they're wanting to start a foundation after that to help families that have the same situation happen. So it's a good cause. We're reaching out to Sooner Nation. And you can, if you follow us on Twitter, if you would, forward all of our stuff about the event, the T-shirts. And, we're not asking people to donate money. We're asking people, we're offering you a product. Hey, if you'll buy this, we're going to give all the money to this foundation. So I hope everybody will do that. But anyway, Jason, is there anything else you want to touch base on today?
No, man.
Any more genius you want to drop on us?
I wouldn't say it's genius. If I had some genius, I'd get Doc Brown and Marty McFly to speed us up and get us closer to speed.
Well, hey, we really appreciate you coming back on with us. Everybody loved our first podcast with you, and since then, we've been hassled through direct messages and stuff, or when we were going to get you back on. So I had to get you back on because I'm tired of seeing that on my direct messages. It's like,
hey, anytime, man.
But we sure appreciate it, and we'll get you back on again. So that's it for this podcast. Boomer Rob,
Boomer Terry,
and Boomer Jason.
Boomer guys.
Thanks for listening to the Sooner Football Fans Podcast. If you want to be on the podcast and talk Sooner football with us, go to www.soonerfootballfans.com. Click on the How to Be on the Podcast tab, fill out the form, and we'll get you on. Boomer.